Hi besties, welcome back to the channel. Maximum Effort Productions, Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, Leslie Sloan, Sony, all of them are now being accused of playing a direct role in the collapse of Blake Lively's public reputation. And based on everything we're seeing, Ryan Reynolds appears desperate to cover up not only his own involvement, but his wife's decisions, their company's conduct, and their publicist's role in the chaos. This new motion for spoliation, the one Blake filed about allegedly deleted signal messages, reads less like a legal argument and more like a panicked attempt to bury evidence before Wayfarer can expose what actually happened on that set. And the filings make it very clear this is about protecting Ryan, Blake, Maximum Effort, and Leslie Sloan from being confronted with their own actions. Blake's entire argument hinges on claiming that Wayfarer used Signal Auto Delete to run a coordinated digital smear campaign against her, supposedly orchestrated by Jed Wallace in under 48 hours. But the timeline makes no sense. Jed didn't even join the project until after negative coverage had already begun circulating. Expecting anyone to manipulate the entire internet in 2 days is absurd. Blake wants the judge to go nuclear, sanction Wayfarer, punish them financially, prevent them from defending themselves at trial, and strike their entire argument about the publicity being organic. She tried a similar tactic with Jamie Heath and the birth video, and the judge already said absolutely not. Severe sanctions weren't appropriate then, and they're not appropriate now. But the real irony? In the process of filing all these motions, Blake accidentally exposed huge parts of Wayfarer's defense, including details most people had never seen before. That seems to be exactly what Ryan Reynolds and Maximum Effort were trying to avoid. If the defense is allowed to stand, it puts the spotlight directly back on Ryan, Blake, Leslie, and their company's involvement. Let's look at the interrogatories Wayfarer answered, specifically Justin Baldoni's, since he's central to the conflict. Blake demanded to know why they claimed the backlash against her was entirely organic. Their answer? They lay out every single factor that contributed to the public turning on Blake, and it has nothing to do with the secret campaign. According to Wayfarer, Colleen Hoover's book, the film, Blake herself, and Ryan Reynolds were already massive conversation drivers online. Negative responses began the moment Blake was cast and intensified after wardrobe photos surfaced, wardrobe Blake selected herself. Then rumors about discord between Blake, the director, the producers, and the studio fueled speculation even further. Wayfarer says the real catalyst was Blake and certain cast members mass unfollowing Justin Baldoni on social media, paired with Baldoni's noticeable absence from marketing and press events. On top of that, Blake's alleged attempts to wrest creative control from Baldoni and Wayfarer were already circulating within fan spaces. Then Wayfarer gets specific. A tone-deaf marketing campaign created by Blake in coordination with Maximum Effort and Ryan Reynolds. Blake promoting a film about domestic violence using her hair care and alcohol brand tie-ins. The decision to name a sponsored cocktail after the male lead, a documented domestic abuser in the story. Blake refusing to appear with Justin Baldoni in photos, press, panels, and screenings. Blake pushing the cast to unfollow Justin, Blake avoiding the film's actual themes while focusing on jokes, levity, and offbeat interviews, Blake feeding information and curated text messages to the New York Times before filing her lawsuit, her legal team's aggressive PR tactics, which Wayfarer claims diluted the language of survivorship and DARVO, the continued intimidation of influencers via subpoenas to silence criticism. Wayfarer ties all of this together and argues that the backlash was inevitable given Blake's choices, not the result of a secret conspiracy. They also highlight that none of these issues existed before Blake entered the project. The working environment changed only after she came on board. Their argument is blunt. Blake Lively was the common denominator in the conflict. And then there's the final dagger. Wayfarer states that the #1 driver of Blake's negative press wasn't any lawsuit. It was the marketing campaign conceived by Blake and Ryan Reynolds through Maximum Effort Productions, meaning Ryan's company created the campaign. Ryan approved the strategy and the public rejected it. Blake's motion for spoliation doesn't erase that. If anything, it makes the alleged cover-up look worse. Let's talk about the part of Wayfarer's filing that is blowing up everywhere. The section detailing Blake Lively's alleged unclean hands. And to understand that, we have to start with one of the most baffling decisions made by Maximum Effort, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively during the marketing of the film. According to the filing, it was Ryan and Maximum Effort's idea to create a 5-minute skit where Ryan plays a jealous husband toward Brandon Sklenar, the actor playing Atlas. The joke was supposed to be comedic, but viewers immediately felt something was off. It didn't read as satire. It read as Ryan acting like an insecure, controlling partner in a film that's literally centered on domestic abuse. And it made no sense considering Blake and Brandon weren't even love interests in the movie. There wasn't a single kiss between them, so the jealousy bit, and Ryan leaning into it so aggressively, felt tone-deaf then and still does now. But Wayfarer says this skit is just one example of a much bigger pattern. What unclean hands means in this case. The defendants argue that Blake Lively participated in the same type of wrongful conduct she accuses Wayfarer of committing, specifically running a calculated smear campaign. They claim Blake created hostility and conflict on set. She alienated the cast and crew from Justin Baldoni. She sidelined him from the production. She refused to treat Baldoni or his religious beliefs with respect. She orchestrated and continues to pursue a coordinated effort to shake public sentiment against him. They also accuse her of showing extreme disrespect towards survivors of sexual and domestic violence by downplaying the film's anti-abuse themes and tying in her hair care line and even her alcohol brand to the movie's marketing. According to the filing, she leaned into humor and levity during press events instead of the serious message of the film. Wayfarer then makes an even bolder claim. The Shell Company and the NYT hit piece. They argue Blake used a sham lawsuit filed through a shell company to launder stolen communications taken from Janelle's phone. These messages, which they say were spliced and stripped of context, were allegedly shared with the New York Times before Blake even filed anything in court. That, they say, is the core of her unclean hands. Why Wayfarer says Blake failed to mitigate her own reputational harm. Blake also asked the court how she supposedly failed to mitigate her reputational harm. Wayfarer responded that she caused the damage herself and then actively made it worse. They point out, Blake claims she's turning down the work, not that offers are being withdrawn. She refuses to work on projects at the same time as Ryan because they don't want to be apart. Wayfarer notes that in Hollywood, like any career with travel, being apart is normal. But Ryan, according to their description, becomes extremely jealous when his partner is away. They even reference rumors that Blake has developed feelings for co-stars before. Penn Badgley, Ben Affleck, and of course, Ryan Reynolds during Green Lantern. Wayfarer implies Ryan doesn't trust her, and their joint decision to limit her work is self-imposed, not caused by any alleged smear campaign. They also say Blake further damaged her own reputation after August 2024 by connecting her alcohol and hair care brands to a film about domestic abuse, making provably false statements about Wayfarer, exploiting Me Too language in a way that undermined her credibility, using aggressive legal tactics, including that Shell Company lawsuit, intimidating content creators online, coordinating a one-sided New York Times piece to influence public opinion. Who Wayfarer blames for the damage? Blake asks them directly, "Who do you think caused my reputational harm?" And their answer was brutal. Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Maximum Effort, Leslie Sloan, Vision PR, Stephanie Jones, Jones Works, and Sony. Every entity surrounding her, including her husband and their own company, is listed as responsible. Blake demands proof of the smear campaign and they give it to her. Blake also demanded to know the basis for Wayfarer's claim that she orchestrated a smear campaign, and their response lines up with months of behavior we've already discussed. The mass unfollowing of Justin Baldoni, refusing joint photos during press and promo, attempting to ban him from the premiere, explicitly avoiding saying his name in interviews, having his name removed from marketing materials, planting negative press through Leslie Sloan, working with the New York Times for months to push a damaging narrative, accusing Baldoni and Heath of sexual harassment without evidence, releasing confidential CRD documents to maximize reputational harm, issuing inflammatory statements accusing Wayfarer of DARVO. Taken together, Wayfarer says this is textbook smear campaign behavior. And there's a final twist. While Blake keeps publicly accusing attorney Ryan Friedman of abusive legal tactics, the filings show Wayfarer has been privately accusing her of the very same conduct for months.
It's starting to feel like Blake Lively's team knew exactly what was coming, and instead of addressing the accusations head-on, they tried to get in front of the narrative to confuse everyone. The strategy seems to be, no, Wayfarer is doing it, not me. But when you look at the filings, it's clear Wayfarer's defenses aren't new. Blake has known for months what they have on her. She knows she wasn't smeared. She knows sexual harassment didn't happen. And now she's flipping their accusations back onto them. This is classic DARVO: deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. She's filing sanctions, motions to compel, motions about spoliation, all of it. And she's doing it first. In cases involving people who weaponize the legal system, rushing to the court to frame the issue before the other side does is a common tactic. If she accuses Wayfarer of abusive legal conduct first, she can muddy the waters so that when Wayfarer presents the real evidence, the judge thinks both sides are doing it. And that's exactly what it looks like here. As soon as her sham action through Vanzon was exposed, her team immediately moved to subpoena Brian Friedman's law firm and accuse him of abusing her publicly. It's a move designed to manipulate the public, confuse the judge, and reverse the narrative. Again, textbook DARVO. Why is she targeting street relations? Wayfarer argues that after the massive backlash in August, Blake desperately needed a scapegoat, so she tried to shift the blame onto Jed and street PR to gaslight the public into believing the criticism wasn't her fault. According to the filing, the smear campaign operation began in August 2024, when her publicist allegedly planted stories that Justin Baldoni fat-shamed her and belonged to a cult. From there, Wayfarer claims Blake secretly teamed up with Jonesworks and Stephanie Jones, Justin's former PR firm, to launder private stolen communications from Janelle's phone. These messages were spliced, stripped of context, and used to support a false narrative that Blake's reputation tanked because of a retaliatory smear campaign over non-existent sexual misconduct claims. Wayfarer says Blake and her reps fed these false allegations to the New York Times. The day before publication, she requested a right to sue notice from the CRD and attached a list of allegations, which should have remained confidential. But because she leaked them to the NYT, they became reportable. This explains why she went to the New York Times instead of any California outlet. California law prohibits reporting on confidential CRD documents. New York doesn't. Between the subpoena rules and the confidentiality loopholes, New York was the only place she could get the narrative out. Their fully performed defense? One of Wayfarer's affirmative defenses is that they fully performed every contractual obligation. The loan-out agreement, the nudity rider, the protection side letter, everything. They argue they followed FEHA, Title VII, and all related laws. And they emphasize that Blake consented to everything she now claims was improper. They list the examples. She consented to the role she was cast in. She consented to filming intimate scenes. She approved script changes. She allowed some improvisation. She permitted Jamie Heath to enter her trailer on the occasion she now complains about. She approved the use of the word sexy to describe her character's wardrobe. It's remarkable that her team filed all of this in court when almost none of it relates to the spoliation argument. The only relevant issue was who she communicated with on Signal. But Blake is trying to use deleted Signal messages as a way to block Wayfarer from presenting their defenses at all. She's essentially telling the judge they deleted a few texts so they shouldn't be allowed to defend themselves. What she's really trying to stop? Wayfarer's defenses, the ones that would go before a jury, are extremely damaging to Blake, Ryan Reynolds, Maximum Effort, Leslie Sloan, Sony, JonesWorks, and Vision PR. Not because Wayfarer ran a digital smear campaign, but because Blake's own actions and the actions of her husband, their company, and their PR teams are what tanked her reputation. By claiming spoliation, Blake is trying to block that evidence from ever reaching a courtroom. This looks far more like Ryan Reynolds trying to protect Maximum Effort. If the company goes down, Ryan's brand goes down, and Blake and Ryan's financial stability goes with it. Ryan earns significantly more than Blake does. His film salaries, his productions, his companies, that's where the money is. If his brand takes the hit, their entire public and financial identity collapses. So this scorched earth strategy appears less about Blake defending herself and more about Ryan shielding himself and his business from being exposed as a driving factor in Blake's professional downfall. And when you look at how controlling the marriage has appeared, the jealousy issues, the refusal to work separately, the pattern of tension on sets, it suddenly becomes clear why they're fighting so violently to keep Wayfarer's defenses out of court. Because if a jury hears all of it, it's over. And the judge likely won't buy their spoliation argument.